Welcome back. State of Sports series continues. We're talking about video games here, sports video games, and what the hell is going on in this industry. And we're doing it with Jeff Eisenband, who is very much like me, just interested in video games as a whole. And sports video games, we're both very invested in the success of specific games and franchises, but we're not really seeing that as of late, it appears. And we're worried because of what's going to come going forward. And in 2025, what the hell? Are we just going to continue being stagnant, or are we going to see some uptick here in quality? Jeff, just broadly,
Yes.
where are you at with the state of sports video games as a consumer and as someone who's covered this as well? But as a consumer, just where are you at with this?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm someone who is obsessed probably with sports video games through about age 20, let's say 7. We've talked on your channel, Bryan, about how I covered the NBA 2K League, NBA Twitch channel for a long time. Roughly, let's put it from 2018 to 2022, I was right in the thick of things, right in the thick of this attempt from the NBA to create a high-level, top-level professional video game circuit. And now I'm 31 and a half, and I'm on the older side of this industry, but I'm still really invested in this, and I still really want sports video games to succeed. I think that sports video games have to adjust like anything in terms of the sports and entertainment industry, that you can't expect the same playbook that you ran back before the internet, before online video games, before the modern way that we go about consuming content. You can't expect to keep running that back and everything to succeed. And when we talk about running that back, that's, hey, we're selling a new game every year at this price, new cover athletes, new Legends cover athletes, new roster changes, and that's what's going to get people to buy. And I think that obviously there's a little bit of a stagnance there, and I think that we can get into it. There's a mirror in terms of the rest of the non-sports industry that is forcing sports video games to make decisions and kind of adjust to how things are.
I want you to elaborate on that point. First, I want to read to you because we're getting into the quality here, and we both agree, and many people agree, it's gotten stagnant. And I remember when I would look forward to like IGN reviews, GameSpot reviews. Now I mainly look at Metacritic, and I pop on YouTube and I look at some people, like I will shout one out, Soft Drink TV, whose channel is very much like sports video game heavy, covers a lot of like content that I would be interested in terms of like older sports video games and why this died out and how Madden took over NFL games. And now there's a Madden documentary out on Amazon that is kind of propaganda, a lot of people say. But and overall, we all feel like these franchises have gotten stagnant, like the show FIFA, formerly known as FIFA, now just EAFC or whatever it is, NHL, NBA 2K, WWE to a lesser degree, because that's actually been pretty good. But the ratings also reflect this. Like I pulled just some Metacritic scores for Madden, for example, and from like 11 through 24, because we're at this point, and 25 just came out, the ratings are going to be about this. The ratings are about the same. But Madden 11, which is commonly referred to as like one of the last like great ones, or maybe the last great one, Madden 11 was like awesome. That got an 85 Metacritic score. Nothing else has gotten that since. There were some in the mid 2010s that got into the mid 80s, like Madden 16, Madden 17. But it's dwindled down to like 76, 76, 63, 68, 69 over the last few years. And like, this is what it is. If you look franchise after franchise, same thing with 2K. 2K is in the 60s now after always being in the 80s and 90s. 2K is one that's taken a more precipitous fall. And the show even has dipped from constantly being in like the low to mid 80s and even 90s early on in the 2010s to where that's below 80. Same thing with soccer. Like that's also in the 70s. None of these have an 80 Metacritic score right now. And these are major, major franchises that we as gamers, consumers kind of depend on a year in, year out basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you talk about Madden 11, and I don't want to say that that it's flawed, but things were different just in terms of something that we've talked about is the lack of online video game accessibility. I know at that point, the mid 2000s was when Xbox Live debuted and the start of the online video game revolution, but you still had so many people waiting for that new game to
Yeah.
play against the computer, to play on whatever, superstar independent player, my player mode was active at the time. And I think that as that, as there's been more accessibility in the world and less of that waiting for that new technology every August for Madden to change the game. Um, I think that's just changed how people have viewed sports video games. That, I mean, it's also roster construction used to be such a big deal, right? Well, when you can manually change the rosters, or when you're playing games like take the majority of people that are playing NBA 2K and that are playing in online modes, that are playing on the playground, that are playing as their own individual players, they don't care about the year to year change in the game from a roster standpoint as our generation used to. So, there's still technology that can change. There's still, like, NBA 2K has done work diligently to try to change the neighborhood, try to change the online experience, try to make the changes there as opposed to changing, rosters, just because that's a way to, push people to buy the new game, to experience the new game. It's kind of like how we talk about your iPhone eventually just the battery stops working as well, right? And you've got to buy the new one. It's like NBA 2K, like the new game comes out and 2K Sports, rightfully so, is going to invest the most time and energy and technology into the newest form of the game. So that's pushes you to kind of stay active. And even though you hear people complain, still buy the game, because you can't have that online experience anymore unless you adjust to the new game, because that's where the online gamers are going. I think that mirrors, in a way, like a Call of Duty or a Halo experience. You can enjoy one game, but if you enjoy the online aspect the most, you are kind of forced your hand to adjust as the newer form of the game comes out. Now, I think that's a good segue into sports video games versus combat video games, versus fighting video games. And the question that has followed sports video games for the last 5 years or so, really, I mean, you can go back to when Fortnite started popping off, because Fortnite changed the game of saying, hey, you just got to get the game once. There'll be add-ons and things, but you don't have to go to a store. You don't have to online get the new version of the game. You just have to install the new update. And there have been a lot of sports fans clamoring for that, in terms of, hey, don't make us keep buying the new game. Just make us install the update. Technology's at this point where, you can just install the update and you're good to go. And maybe it's not quite there. We're at this point where we're so close with so many individuals, video games just being online downloads as opposed to needing to have the physical disc. But there's still a lot of technology, and hard drives and RAM are still needed to make this all happen. But I think that's where sports fans want sports video games to go. You talk about Madden. Hey, you don't have to get the new game every year. You have to just click the download button. But of course, at Madden HQ, there's all this, think about the people still who've been working there for decades. We have to sell copies. We have to do a new cover athlete. We have to do all of these new aspects every year. And that's where this all is coming to a head right now.
That is the Fortnite model is interesting. I'm almost positive it's never going to happen with sports games. I think there will be independent games that try this 1st, like Maximum Football, for example, because everyone wants a Madden alternative. Maximum Football, for example, did decide to go for free, and that's a video game that's formerly, if people don't know, like Doug Flutie was involved with in terms of like name branding. That partnership seems to no longer be there, but Maximum Football is basically like you can it's very much into like you can create your team, you can create like a whole bunch of creativity is like really the steez of it all. It seems like you can even play like CFL style, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty interesting and fun. But like they went free, And I think that is going to be like, all right, we'll have add-ons along the way. And I feel like the AAA games and those organizations, those big organizations, I don't think they're going to do that, because I think instead of, I think they're not going to do that because the sales aren't taking enough of a hit to where they're going to change entirely. And they feel like enough people will buy the product anyway if it's, you know, 79.99 or whatever it is now per year, deluxe editions notwithstanding, which are more. And I think that if they do ever decide to go the Fortnite route, it'd be interesting because I think people would be more like willing to do the microtransaction thing. They'd be more willing to sort of like, all right, I got it for free. I'll add on this, this, and this, and then I'll be good, instead of just buying it every single year. But I don't think I doubt that's going to happen. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think that I wouldn't say never say never is a broad way to put it. I think that we're seeing, we just keep seeing technology change, and I think, Bryan, we've been post college, about a decade now, and I go back to
Oh,
like I
Jesus.
remember I graduated college in 2015, and a few months in, I remember
16 for me.
talking to people about Yahoo, and I was working for a website that was very focused on getting our articles onto the Yahoo homepage. And I said in a meeting, what are we going to do when people stop getting Yahoo email addresses? And they were like, what? What are you talking about? People are always going to have Yahoo email addresses. And like, there's always, I mean, and things have moved much faster, I think, technologically. As time goes on, things move much faster. And so I think that, this is something that these companies are going to have to review. You talked about the Fortnite model, and the reason the Fortnite model was financially not just successful, but wildly successful,
Yeah.
is that, even though you only had to pay for the game was free. All of the add-ons in a year, or all of the assets that gamers were buying, were coming to a number way higher than if you just paid $59.99, $69.99, $79.99, whatever the game was worth at the time. And now these sports games are selling for much less. And you already have the developers relying on in-game assets as well, kind of a hybrid model. So I think that as their hand is going to be continued to push, as technology, like we said, is getting to the point that every gamer is going to be downloading games, not needing to go to a store and buy a physical copy, and everything will be built right into the experience. I think then we'll at least be getting much closer to a world where it's, hey, I have the game, I got it once. What do I need to add on to have this experience? And there'll be tiers of games. There'll be, we're on a product right now talking. I don't know if you want to say what third party, what site you use to broadcast to create
If you
these
know, you
videos,
know.
but
If other people who use this, they know what I'm using.
but there's a there's a base free version, right? And then if you want to have certain assets from a imagery standpoint, if you want to talk to more people, if you want to have a longer form conversation, then you need to pay a little bit more. So I think
Which I
that
do. Yes.
that is just such a model that the world is going in so many different ways. I mean, look at Hulu. It is another great example of, like, you can have the first version, or you can buy the version without ads. Spotify is the same sort of way. You can have the free version of Spotify and listen to ads, or you can just make whatever the purchase is and not have ads. Amazon, you can ship stuff via Amazon, or you can pay for Amazon Prime and get all these assets and not have to pay for shipping throughout the year. And I know myself, I pay for Amazon Prime because I know that I would pay more in shipping if I didn't. But like, I think if sports video games just continue to hide behind this, they're not going to, they're going to lose fans and users. And you talked about that Doug Flutie game, and I still think games like Madden and NBA 2K are going so hard on name recognition, because licenses still matter, but there will be games that can get the team license maybe, but not the player's license, right? And then if you can still play Madden and you can still put yourself on the New York Giants, but you don't necessarily need Devin Singletary and Wan'Dale Robinson, will people care about that if they're able to just swipe their card once or not even swipe at all, have a free version add-ons, and they're playing against their friends in these created team versions anyway? So that's where this is all coming to a head, that there'll need to be adjustments made. And I think the rights will play a big factor into that, because we've come to just accept that most, in the online era, one game per sport has really dominated. But when we were growing up and there was no online, the NBA gave their license to NBA Live, EA Sports, 2K. Right there was like a Sega game, like NBA.
This is
NBA.
This is part of the issue. This is part of the problem.
Well, I think where you're saying that, I'd imagine, like so many people who feel like the lack of competition, the almost monopolizing of these games, has allowed these games not to feel like they need to innovate. I don't know if I agree with that wholeheartedly, because I feel like there's a divide. I work in golf a lot more now. I've equated the PGA Tour Live Golf debate that people will say, oh, well, competition's great. I'm like, no, it's not, because now neither product is as high as it needs to be. And I think in the online gaming world, and as we've tried to have esports for these games, it's been important that the games have, centralized, where all the gamers are together. And I think, you go cross-platform has been a big part of making that happen. These games creating cross-platform online environments, but I still think, but I think that these leagues won't be afraid to pass their licenses around a little bit more if there comes, some people come to the table and are willing to create these free-to-play models that we're talking about.
I would agree, except I can point to previous iterations, like the games we lament, the games that we miss from back in the day, are all in an era or from an era where there was some level of competition. For the most part, there was less competition, obviously, in the 2010s, but like I remember the show and MLB 2K, being a thing. And the show clearly won out, and it was the better game. NBA Live and NBA 2K is the most famous one because NBA Live was actually the dominant game. Like, there are people who don't even remember this, but NBA Live was actually the more high profile, the better game for a while. And that sort of switch happened in like the not really, probably the late 2000s.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And then you have,
but why did it switch?
No, but I'm getting to a different point here. It's like, and then with football specifically, this is the big example to me. A lot of people, and I don't think this is hyperbole, a lot of people say that NFL 2K5 is the best football game ever made. It was the last 2K football game, other than All Pro Football 2K8, that was made. And Madden has had the exclusivity deal since, and they kept renewing it. I think the next one is either going to expire in 2026 or 2025. I think it's 2026. I'm almost certain it's 2026. But that's one example where to this day people are like, I wish 2K made NFL game. Now, I wish NFL made 2K games. Now, I don't know if it's going to be what it was back then. Like there's a strong possibility that it's not going to be the case. But I do think competition can breed some special things when it comes to gaming. I coming from somebody who's a wrestling fan, like the WWE has always been better when there's competition, when there's like legit competition. When WCW was competition, WWE stepped their game up and put them out of business. And then after they did, it got stagnant for a little while. TNA didn't become enough of a factor for them to really get pushed, although that may have helped a little bit. Now there's AEW that has a lot of money, but objectively, like AEW is just not a very good product, like at all. And it's poorly run. And while it looked like they could be challengers at one point, I don't think that's going to be the case because they're so mismanaged. But WWE has still stepped their game up regardless. So I do think competition in this arena could be helpful, but it doesn't look like there's a route to that now because of all the exclusivity deals. You're going to have to get like another major company to strike a deal with, like making a AAA game with this organization, getting the partnership. And I don't think it's in the league's best interest to do that, just from a business standpoint, because I think they want one partner, one exclusive relationship, and they can make the most money out of them instead of just putting their license on all these other type of games.
You go back NFL 2K5. Well, what do we remember that made it so special? The ESPN integration was huge at the time. And this is
Yes.
peak ESPN. Like Chris Berman is in the game. It's like, what? Like, oh, sorry. Like, what? It's like,
Right.
What? It was really good. Then there was, I remember there was the mode where you're in the helmet and,
First person
you
mode.
kind of
Yes.
first person mode.
You had the
And so
crib. You had the crib. You get to battle Funk Flex's team and Carmen Electra's team. You had a draft with really in depth things that you had to do from a scouting standpoint. The scouting reports in general. The playbooks for the time were actually good. The graphics, the animations, like it was ahead of its time. I have this on my phone right now. I have a PS2 emulator on my phone right now, and this game is part of it.
But kids today don't care about that stuff. Like, and I'm not saying obviously it would be different 19 years later, 20 years later, but kids today just care about the online experience, and they just care about showing their characters and their abilities off to their friends. So that's so much of what's driving video games now.
Let me ask you this. So is that why we're seeing ratings go down for games every year? Not sales, but like
I think
what I just gave you in terms of Metacritic is just the focus on online play. Is that what's hurting the quality of games?
See, I would say not the quality, but I would say the sales, because I would say it just matters. Like, people don't care about the roster configuration like they used to. They don't care about the change of rosters. Like it's like I couldn't get after NBA Live, let's just say 2004. Like, I had to get NBA Live 2005 because Stephon Marbury was on the Knicks in the new game.
Right.
It's like, it'd be like if you were like, if my mom was like, well, why can't you just play the game from last year? I'd be like, what are you, crazy? Like, I need Stephon Marbury, not Charlie Ward, as the Knicks point guard now.
Right. And the dunk contest and the 3-point contest.
Well, yeah, but my point, but that's not what drove me. That was an asset, but that's not what drove me to buy the games back then. So now I think kids just don't care as much. I still, you use the word quality. I still think the quality innovates every year to accommodate, these sort of individual aspects of the game. But I just think that that's so much of where things are now. Let's talk about Grand Theft Auto for a second, right?
Please.
Grand Theft Auto,
another game I love.
5 came
6
out.
is coming out early 2025.
Sure, allegedly. Well, I'm saying this because Grand Theft Auto 4 or 5, I remember when it came out when I was in college. It was my junior year of college, fall 2013. And the game has still, or summer 2013, and the game has still stood the test of time to a degree. And you don't even create your own characters as much in that game. You have over
your
time.
Online character.
Your online characters. But the online portion of the game added an entire new dimension in the second half of its lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
And so look at how that game has carried itself for 11, 12 years. And I'm not saying we need that from an NBA game, but I think that there's this drive for people that they spend so much time working on my player in NBA 2K as an example, and they want to just bridge that to the next, to the next game. Right now, people are playing EA Sports college football and they're building programs, and they don't care about what's a new game you're going to have to start from scratch. Like, you just want to keep getting your program into the next century. So I think that this is the age old, I had this issue, again, going back to working in digital media as things began to change. Like, people needed to stop worrying about pre-roll ads and ads and ads and make the product cool and integrate ads, as opposed to caring about pre-roll. And the people who had worked on commercials for so many years just couldn't change their mindset about it, right? The best YouTubers in the world who are making so much money right now are integrating ads into their content. They do not care about hitting you with a 15-second pre-roll ad and trying to, satisfy advertisers that way. So in the same sort of way, these games need to adjust and hit what the consumers desire, or as opposed to continuing to just trap consumers into payments that they feel like they're being forced into, as opposed to being part of the experience.
Do we think that do we think that the golden era has passed us, or are we too old to have this conversation?
Um, I mean, the golden era it depends like what, right? I think that whether it's sports, entertainment, any topic, video games, they can have multiple golden eras. Like to us,
I agree.
the 2000s is this golden era of the peak of like dynasty mode, right? And
Yes.
people that are a little older than us, the 90s didn't have dynasty mode, right? There wasn't enough technology. It couldn't fit that data into games. It's like you played the play now mode against, and maybe you had a season mode. And then this dynasty mode came in, and for us, it was like the biggest deal in the world. Like I can build a franchise and I can go year to year. I can put Manny Ramirez on the Yankees. Like, what? That's crazy. And I think that the Gen Zers, not to make us feel old, Bryan, but look at us, look at that and be like, who cares? Like that's just a baseline part of a video game. So I think that there can be a future golden age where technology hits a new level. I think that we don't even know what we're going to get into, that you can create an avatar that looks exactly like in virtual reality, playing like in the backcourt with Jalen Brunson for the Knicks. I don't think we know exactly what we're getting into yet. So I think there can be another golden age for this generation, but I think that continuing to sort of run back the same thing, and I think where gamers get frustrated is they don't feel like, in the grand scheme of things, other than a couple of technological changes, nothing has changed from say 2018 to 2025 in sports video games. And that's where I think there just needs to be sort of this adjustment to feeling like, and I think it comes with, hey, we're going to bridge the gap year to year. You don't have to worry about a whole new cycle of the game starting in August, in September, or whatever sport it may be. And I think that that's going to rejuvenate sports gamers a bit.
I think I hope so, but I'm very skeptical because I think rejuvenation kind of comes with nostalgia. For example, college football 25 just got announced as like the highest selling sports video game like ever, and that's all nostalgia. The game itself is good. It's like it's good. It doesn't feel like just Madden but college to me. But there
Mm-hmm.
are some people who would say that. I don't think it's like you know, the greatest game I've ever played, but it's fun. I actually am probably one of the rare people who play Road to Glory more than Dynasty mode, or have so far. But I be Christmas break is coming, so there will be dynasties being made. And also like Undisputed is a boxing game that I've talked about, and it's the first big time like AAA boxing game that we've gotten since 2011. So like the last Splinter Cell, last Fight Night, the last like Grand Theft Auto, this is all like around the same time for me, right? It was my late
Mm-hmm.
teen years. And now two of the games are coming back. Grand Theft Auto's coming back. We got a boxing game. Fight Night is not coming back. Well, hasn't come back. There's rumors about them potentially coming back. Undisputed was basically like based on nostalgia. It's like finally we have a boxing game. The game itself, it's okay. There's a lot of shit wrong with it. They keep having to patch things, and they did the mistake of they charge for a deluxe, and even if you bought the deluxe, you still have to pay like $15 for a pack, $20 really. But on sale, $15 for an add-on that includes Jake Paul and other actual boxers like Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, Juan Manuel Marquez, Zhilei Zhang. The only name you've probably heard of is Jake Paul. You know what I mean? So,
Unfortunately, I'm not
as
proud of
somebody
that.
who
Yeah.
doesn't follow boxing, but like to me, all those other names matter a lot more. And I worry about next year, and we'll wrap on this discussion. Just the stagnation continuing in 2025, because I kind of think 2K is just going to be the same. I got 2K this year on sale, half off Black Friday, and it's the same. It's 2K, the same thing every year. There's a little bit more you can do on the WNBA side of things, cool, but for the most part, it's the same shit. And they added the Steph Curry era, which there's some incompleteness there, I will say. So there's some things that they could tweak there, but they're not obviously investing into that mode heavily. I feel like 2K is going to be the same. I feel like Madden is going to be the same. I feel like NHL is going to be the same. I did not buy that. Didn't buy Madden. And it just feels like all these games are going to be mostly the same unless we get nostalgia, which we're not going to have with college football because that's already back. And college football 26, I don't think is going to be as good as college football 25.
You know, well, let me. I know
Threw a lot
I'm
at
being
you there. I
interviewed.
know.
I'm being interviewed, but I want to know like why you think it won't be as good. I mean that because this is an example of you brought up the ESPN 2K5 example. We haven't had a college football game for a long time, so it's like 2K. Call EA or whatever it was called, NCAA football 14. I think was the last
14,
one.
yes.
14.
Yes.
Which I had built a dynasty with Northwestern. And I remember like one thing that jumps out is right. Barstool Big Cat started playing online and during the height of the pandemic, started building a program in 2020 with that game that was 6 or 7 years old. And people watched. And I'm
yes.
saying no one watched that game and thought like, wow, this is so outdated because the last 6 to 7 years of Madden and football video games had basically looked the same. And so even when, you can pick up the game and not have picked up a football game for like 10 to 15 years and you still know the controls, you still can make it work. You might have to relearn some of the animations. I know like I worked with an actual professional Madden player once who was like going through all of the defensive audibles and offensive audibles and changing the coverage. And, that's high level stuff that is learned behavior. But you still can just jump right. So that's where I think you're probably right. It's not going to be that much different. But the only reason this one was that much different is because it had been 10 years since we had the game. 11 years.
I worry about, again, stagnation. EA Sports doesn't necessarily have my full trust. Like I think they hit it out the park, especially marketing, with the return of college football 25. Now I'm skeptical that they're actually going to build off of it in 26 more than they're just going to like, all right, here's the game again, maybe with a tweak here, a tweak there, but you guys are into college football, so here it is. And then like it's just my cynicism, and I hope I'm dead wrong, obviously. But I think like all of these franchises, I feel like have lost at least some trust from their core fan bases because of just rinse and repeat. Here's your update, and it's not really an update. And I do think there's a loud portion of people who are extreme and think that all these games suck. I don't think that's the case. But if you do look at reviews, a lot of the user reviews, when the game comes out, they're not favorable, especially the Madden. They've been killing Madden. So I'm concerned about that because I'm not sure how this turns around unless we just get to a point where, like, okay, here's another shift, and maybe it shifts from like the hyper focus on the online experience back into something else because everything moves in cycles. But I'm not sure this is going to move in that kind of cycle. I don't really know what the next year or 5 years kind of looks like in this arena.
I don't know either, but I think we've danced around it a lot. It's kind of what would we want? And I think that there's definitely a difference too between what we would want and what other people would want. Because I just think Gen Z, like I said, is so individual focused. Like I don't know the numbers, but I don't know if Gen Z has been into EA Sports college football the way that our generation has with the nostalgia.
So maybe we should stop focusing on them because we're the ones buying shit too.
But are we? That's the question. Like, one thing I thought about before I came on here is
that's a joke.
Because one thing I thought about was like, and I talked to you before, I'm not playing video games as much as I used to. I'm open to talking about that. When I worked in video games, it was harder to talk about.
They've beaten it out of you. That's why.
Well, it's because I'm older. Like when I finish work for the day, like my wife would rather I watch TV with her than I fire up Dynasty mode, which I understand. But when I have kids one day, this is the difference between I think myself and my dad. I would try to make my dad play video games, and you know how our parents' generation is with technology. Like, I'm terrified that every time my dad sends a text or an email, he's going to send it to like 10 people that he didn't realize are on the chain. So he wasn't as well versed. He wasn't as into it. But like when I have a 10-year-old who's like, Dad, want to play NBA 2K. I don't know when I'm going to have kids, but let's say NBA 2K 38 or something like that. I'm going to be like, yeah, let's go. And, I feel like I'm going to almost have the second wind of getting into video games again with my kid and bonding with my kid over video games in a way that I wasn't able to with my dad, not because he wasn't a good dad, but it just wasn't as endemic to him. So I do think that's going to be a really interesting wrinkle in video games over the next decade or so when a generation of dads and moms that grew up on video games, we're talking sports video games specifically, are going to have kids going through the same experience that they had, because that's something that that has never really happened before. I'm not talking about a generation of Pong and Pac-Man players. I'm talking about a generation of NBA Live 2005 players. So I think that's going to be just a massive difference. I always talk about, like, are our kids just going to see all our Facebook pictures one day? There's just a totally different generation that we're going to be different types of parents than our parents were.
I'm so glad my parents aren't on social media, by the way. Put that thought in my head. I'm so glad my dad does not.
But look, even if they were, they wouldn't have been in college. It's not like Facebook was around back then, but like Facebook documented our high school and college lives, and it's just there. Our parents had to pull out pictures from deep in albums that they had in, their parents' closets to show us pictures of them as kids. We could just be like, oh yeah, here's me, like maybe at a party in 10th grade, or, this is someone took this while I was doing the science fair in like 9th grade. Like, what? It's just going to be a different experience, and somehow video games is all connected to that.
Making me feel so old. I'm 30.
Listen, you're younger than me.
I'll be 31 in a month, but still, not even a little bit less than that. But still, that's Jeff Eisenband. Follow him at Jeff Eisenband on social media. And follow Eyes on Golf, the podcast, especially if you're interested in golf. But even if you're not, just give it a like, comment, thumbs up. And even if you didn't like this, just, thank you for watching or listening. Give it a like, comment, thumbs up. We'll be back with another episode. Thank you, Jeff, for joining. It's all we have for today. And keep supporting the channel. Appreciate it.